How are you doing? This is David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave, founder of the highest paid part-time job in the Real Options Training Academy. We're definitely not going to talk about the options market, but we are going to talk about some market-based things in this particular video called Want to Move to Atlanta? Watch this video first. This is going to be a really quick and short, concise video around what you should consider before you move to the city of Atlanta. And the reason why I made this is because there's this narrative that's kind of like on both extremes, that either you should move to Atlanta or you should not move to Atlanta. And for a person that lived in Atlanta around, I want to say maybe 6 or 7 years, I want to kind of give my perspective of it, because one of the challenges I think a lot of people have is that their perception of Atlanta a lot of times is television based, is music based. It's not necessarily based on how the city actually works. And then a lot of people, for presentation reasons, they may do social media from the city and they try to put on the presentation. A lot of people have bought into kind of like the imagery of what the city of Atlanta is based around, as opposed to actually getting you to kind of understand what's really going on in the city. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about on this video, because what has happened to a lot of people is that they moved to the city of Atlanta and they did not get the experience that maybe they thought they were going to get, kind of based on the marketing. And as a result, they have a negative experience. And I kind of think if they would have really sat down and spoke to people and got a more of a comprehensive understanding of what they were getting themselves into, a lot of times that they would have visited, and not just visit the party, but actually visit and actually see how the city actually functions, they may have gotten a better understanding of what was going on and could have made a better decision based on what they wanted to get out of it. So let's go into it. So here's some of the things that you need to know before you move into Atlanta, right? First off, what do I want the next 5 to 10 years of my life to look like? Okay, regardless of your age, you're coming out of college, you 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, it doesn't matter. What do I want the next 5 to 10 years of my life to look like? Okay, and one of the things that I noticed that a lot of people move to Atlanta, they really are drawn to it because they really want to party. They really think Atlanta is this long-term, I want to say 24 hours a day party. And they're correct. There's something to do in Atlanta literally every day of the week. I've never seen a city like that outside of maybe New York. And Atlanta's definitely not New York. That's the thing about it, is that Atlanta's not New York. It's not anywhere close to it from a size standpoint. It's not anywhere close to it from a population standpoint. But most definitely in Atlanta, there's something to do every day of the week. I mean, even on Sundays, there's something going on. You know, it can be difficult to get alcohol in certain parts of the metro on Sundays, but there's something going on every day of the week in Atlanta. Therefore, you want to really ask yourself, if I move to Atlanta, what do I want the next 5 to 10 years of my life to look like? Because then you could kind of determine why you're moving there. And most people don't ask themselves that question. They just run up to the city, or run down to the city, or run east or west to the city. And one of the reasons why I think a lot of people are doing it is because there's an old story around Atlanta that has never really gone away, that people are still believing. And it's, you know, this is kind of like an extension of like urban myths. And some of y'all not gonna remember urban myths because you were kind of became of age, like kind of like in the internet era. But it used to be something called urban myths, to where in your community, people believe certain things that may have never been proven to be true or untrue, but people just believed it. So when I was coming up, I'm from the Orlando, Florida area. There was this narrative about this guy that took so much acid, he turned into an orange, right? And it was this guy who had like sheets of acid in his pants, and he fell into like a pool, and then the acid, I guess, transdermaled into his skin from the pool. You know, it's crazy because you think the chlorine would kill it, but that's the story. And he got such a big dose of acid that was so powerful, the guy thought he was an orange. And so he was in like a psychiatric hospital, and he really thought he was an orange. That was an urban myth that went around the Orlando area my whole childhood into my teenage days. And people really told each other this urban myth over and over and over and over and over again. So it became something that either was true, or people was like, no, that's not true. But it definitely was an urban myth, right? And I think because of what happened in the 90s, that a lot of people that are moving to Atlanta currently now in 2022, many of them were not alive, or were really small children. And because Atlanta was seen as a place to go in the 90s, I think a lot of people are still repeating that. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that early 2000s, the music industry in Atlanta blew up. And so it put a lot of light on that city from I would say, a cosmopolitan standpoint. And very much from a hype standpoint, it became this hype because, the music cities used to be New York, Los Angeles. And then the music city changed into being Atlanta. And then because the music city became Atlanta, Atlanta also became the place where a lot of young culture was being created. Where it used to be New York, LA was where the young culture was being created. Then it turned into Atlanta. And I think that continued and gave a lot of legs to the myth or the urban myth that Atlanta was a place that people needed to move to. The problem is that, and I want people to understand something, is that every city in the world, right, has trends, it has cycles. And you'll have a time in that city based on economic situations where that could be the place to move to. And then if you don't get set up within a certain amount of time, it can become a very difficult place to move to now. And then what'll happen is that things will get bad in that city, and then it'll reset, and then it can become the place to move to again. And then you got to get in there and try to get things going within a certain amount of time, or else it can be very difficult to survive in that city. And what some people do is they just choose to stay there and kind of go through the cycles, or maybe they're in a position economically where they can weather those cycles. There's been people been living in New York for hundreds of years. And as New Yorkers become more and more expensive, it doesn't change their lifestyle because they're so well off. It doesn't change their lifestyle to where I was coming up. I remember I saw a lot of people leaving New York and coming down south. This was like early 2000s because they kept telling us, well, New York's too expensive. If you're going to get anything, you got to move way out to Jersey anyway. So I might as well just move down south where it's cheaper than Jersey because I can't afford to live inside New York State. Right? I'm sorry, New York City. And I think that's what a lot of people are doing is they're not taking into account economic cycles and how they can impact the city. Atlanta might have been the place to move to, right? Mid 90s. Might have been the place to move to mid 2000s. However, things have so changed economically, it may not be the place to move to today based on how your life is set up. So the first thing you want to look at is what? What do I want my next 5 to 10 year plan to be? The next thing I would encourage people to look at is that what is my employment situation? I think this is the biggest thing that a lot of people are not really taking into account. What is my employment situation? First, am I highly skilled? Do I have a skill set, right, that is at a high level? And I don't just mean do you have a college degree. I mean, do you add value to a situation that you can be compensated for? Not do you think you do you know it? Do you have a track record of doing this? Can you add value to a situation where people will compensate you for it with money? Right? And then how much money will they compensate you for? You want to ask yourself that. Many people don't take into account their employment situation before they move to Atlanta. You feel me? They just don't take it into account. And it's because what they were doing before, they were not really compensated at a high level for what they were bringing to the table. Then they may move to Atlanta and the cost of living can be a lot higher. So let me give an example. If you go about 2 hours west to Alabama, maybe even not 2 hours west, but about an hour and a half west to Alabama, you can live a lot less expensive than you could if you was living in Atlanta. Therefore, if you're living in Alabama and you're working a job, but the cost of living is so low, you can live a decent lifestyle, and you go to Atlanta with that same skill set, it can be difficult to live a decent lifestyle because the cost of living is so much more higher, because based on your skills, the market will only compensate you at a certain amount based on what value they put on your skill set. And I think that's the most important thing people need to really understand is that your employment situation is going to be a big deal in the city because one, there's a lot more people there. There's a lot more people trying to get jobs. The job market is a lot more competitive, and therefore employers have a lot more people that they can refuse because they always have a lot more people applying for the position. So they can refuse more people. And I think that's something people don't take into account. It's not a place to where there's not even a lot of people even looking for jobs here. So we have a much smaller pool to pick from. In Atlanta, because so many people are looking for jobs there, there's a much larger pool of people to actually look over, which means what? We can refuse more people. Therefore, we got more people that don't have jobs that are willing to take jobs that they normally wouldn't take, which means what is even putting more competition on other positions, because a person can go to Atlanta and they could be qualified in one area, but I can't get a job here. So let me take a job here in this area. But then that means that people that were qualified in that area, they can't get the job now because somebody else took the job. And that's just how the job market works. We talked about before on this channel that the goal of capitalism is to always create surplus labor. And what capitalism has really been successful at in Atlanta is having so many people move there, they always have a massive amount of surplus labor. They don't ever have to hire anybody. Why? Because we got 100 positions and we got 5,000 people that applied. So we don't have to hire anybody because we're never short on labor. There's never a labor shortage in Atlanta. There's always more people looking for work than the jobs that are actually available. So your employment situation, many people move to Atlanta. They don't even have a job offer in Atlanta. They're just moving to Atlanta. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you have to understand what's going on in your life. You don't even have a job offer. You're just moving. 2, if you're self-employed, are you at a point to where you know what you do can support you in the city? There's nothing wrong with being self-employed, but if you have to move to Atlanta and build up your new line of business, so let's say you provide a service and you were providing a service in your old city, but now you got to move to Atlanta. Well, how long do you think it's going to take you to build up your line or your book of business again in this new city? It could take time. Do you have the cash reserves to deal with that? Because it could take you 6 months to a year, maybe even longer, to build your book of business up to where it's supporting you the same way it was supporting you in your old city, because you had networks, everybody knew you, and you want to take that into account. And I think one of the reasons why everybody in Atlanta has this stereotype of everybody in Atlanta is an entrepreneur is really because most people don't make enough money on their regular job because they really don't have a skill set that the market values, that they have to do something on the side to make money. We have in America have this experience that everybody's supposed to just have one job. If you go to other parts of the world, people work multiple jobs to survive. It's an American thing to think I'm only going to work one job and go home. That's an American thing. Other parts of the world, people work 3 and 4 jobs. People have a job to do something on the side. The wife might work a job. She might cook. She might do nanny service. People don't just work one job. And I've seen this with a lot of immigrants that live in Atlanta. I knew a girl from Kenya. She was a home health aide. She also babysat. Why? Because she needed money. Because she didn't really have the skills that the market really valued. So she just had to put together 2 and 3 jobs to be able to help support herself. But that was normal because where she's from, that's what everybody does anyway. Okay, unless you can get a job where you have a salary, you just work whatever you can work and you do whatever you can do to make money because you need money. It's an American thing to think, well, I'm just supposed to do the one job and go home. And we're finding out that many people are not going to be able to maintain that type of lifestyle. So your employment situation is going to be really, really important when you move to the city. It's going to be really important, right? And I think that's something a lot of people don't take into account. And many people that you see like on the YouTube are talking about, you know, I didn't like Atlanta, I regretted it. It's because they didn't really have a really solid employment situation, either based on their skill set or them being an entrepreneur and being really good at it and knowing how to build up a book of business in a new area. I know a sister that had a really, really successful hair business in Charlotte. She's a very hardworking, super intelligent, hell of a businesswoman. She went to Atlanta, got into the real estate game. Now, most people fail at real estate. She hasn't. Wow. She built a really successful hair business from the ground up in Charlotte, right? She sold the business, got out of that business. She didn't want to do it anymore. She went and got into the real estate business. She's killing it in real estate. Why? Because she knows how to build out a book of business. She knows how much work it takes. She used to sell hair out of her car, right? Eventually she got a storefront. Then she started going into doing a lot of AdWords. And she was very successful in using AdWords traffic to drive that business to her store. So she understood how to build up a book of business in one lane. She just took that same hustle and that same experience and her same formula, and she did it in another lane. And she came into Atlanta at the right time when the market really was starting to get hot because of the pandemic. So it was just she caught it at the right time, but she had so much experience in that particular area. And she also had cash reserves. She wasn't financially struggling at all. She was doing very well for herself in her last business. Therefore, her move to Atlanta worked for her. And that's what I think a lot of people that you see on YouTube talking about, well, you know, I moved to Atlanta And, I didn't like this, that, and the third. It really has a lot to do with the fact that they don't really have the skills that particular area really desires. There's major corporations in Atlanta. Most of the people that you're going to see that didn't make it in Atlanta don't work for any of those major corporations. If they do, they're not considered a very valuable member of those organizations. It is not to be disrespectful to them. I'm just saying that's just the reality. And we're going to kind of talk about that, some of the downsides of that. So first thing we're going to talk about, one is your plan. The second thing is your employment situation. The third thing is where do you want to live in the city? So the narrative of Atlanta, the downside of it is that people will say they live in Atlanta, but most people don't live in Atlanta. They live in the metro area. Why? Because the actual city of Atlanta is too expensive. If you're going to live in the really nice parts inside the city, it's very expensive. And I don't mean Buckhead. So people that really know the city know that Buckhead area is really not the nicest part of the city. But that's been marketed to people, right? Because, a lot of people like to follow trends. They buy into the marketing, and that's cool. The marketing works. To me, the Buckhead area was never the best part of actual inside the perimeter. There's areas inside the perimeter to where they'll sell you a house that was built in 1920 for $1 million. But those aren't the areas people are talking about. They're 2-bedroom, 1-bath houses. They're very old houses. They're very well kept, very nice neighborhood. House costs you $1 million, right? But it's not the Buckhead area. And I think that's the perception of Atlanta is that, most people don't really know where the nice low-key areas are at because they're moving to Atlanta because why? They want everything to be a party. In these areas that I'm talking about, there's no party going on here. People are making money. They living their life. They're raising their family. They staying out of the way. There's no party over here. Okay? And most people don't take into account, where am I going to live? Am I going to live inside the perimeter and pay the fee? Or am I going to live outside the perimeter and have to deal with the traffic because I got to come in every day? Or am I going to live in a low income area inside the perimeter and have to deal with the crime? You need to factor that in before you move there. And I think that's what a lot of people don't ask themselves. They don't really, because most people are moving to Atlanta because they think they want to live inside the city. Well, the city's not really that big. It's not a lot of places for you to live. It's not like New York or Chicago or LA. It's really not that big of a city. The actual city of Atlanta got maybe 500,000 people in it. It's not that big. The metro got 6 million. But the actual city got maybe 500,000. It's not a lot of room there. Therefore, where are you going to live? And because many people don't take that into account, they end up finding something and realizing, okay, this is way more expensive than what I thought, or I got to move way out, then I got to deal with the transportation. Fourth thing, the transportation issue. Atlanta's public transportation is terrible. It's almost non-existent. Therefore, if you live in one area, but then you got to work in another area and you don't have a car or you don't have reliable transportation, it can be a problem. That's just how the city is set up. Atlanta is a highway city. Until you really learn it, do you learn how to move residentially, but it can be hard to move through residential roads just kind of based on how the city's set up. It's very hilly. It's not flat. It's not a flat city. I'm from Florida. Everything is flat. It's very hilly. It's not flat. A lot of the roads don't really run directly north, south, east, west. That's something else I learned when I got there. I'm from Florida. The roads pretty much run north, south, east, west straight. Right? That's just pretty much how they run. They don't really run like that in Atlanta. The roads take these weird turns to get you where they got because they got to move around these hills. So because Atlanta got to try to move around these hills and they didn't want to just destroy the environment to move the city, they tried to build a city around the environment. There's a lot of times not a straight way to get somewhere. So you got to kind of take these crazy turns if you're driving, if you don't want to take the highway. So a lot of times the highway becomes the easiest way to get somewhere. However, if you don't have a car, then you can't do any of that. And then now you're stuck in your local area trying to figure out how can I get from point A to point B. But then there has to be jobs in your local area for you to even work. And that's one of the downsides of Atlanta. In a lot of places inside the city, there is no jobs. There are no jobs because the economy there is at such a low level, and the money doesn't move around that area. It leaves that area. Therefore, there's no business in that area. And what can happen is you can move into an area with no business being in that area, and you don't have public transportation, and you also don't have your own car. And then how do you get out of that area to go work somewhere? And these are the things people got to understand. Atlanta has not done a very good job at developing certain parts of the city. Really, a lot of the money has gone north. And I don't mean north like the Buckhead area. I mean north of the perimeter. So you got the downtown area, the midtown area, and then a lot of the money has gone north. The Sandy Springs, the Dunwoody area, the Vinings area, the Smyrna area. That's where a lot of the money has gone, or has gone south, way outside of the city. And I think that's what people don't take into account. So when you move into the city and you don't realize, you know what, there's nowhere really around here for me to really work, but then I don't have a car and public transportation is kind of spotty, then you can't get a job. And that's why a lot of the lower income people in Atlanta are trapped. There's no way for them to work if they wanted to get a job. Why? Because there's no jobs in this area. Right? So you got to take these things into account. I would encourage anybody that's thinking about moving to Atlanta. One, don't believe anything you heard about the city, good or bad. I would tell you to go visit. Go visit, spend a week there, and just look at what's going on. Don't believe anything, because half the people that got a comment on Atlanta, one, they don't really go to the city. If they do go to the city, they don't really go to the city. And what I mean by that is that I had a guy tell me, well, he went to the city of Lenox. He went to Lenox Mall and he saw a bunch of gay people. So his perception was that, well, Atlanta's full of gay people. And I said, well, Atlanta got a metro area of 6 million people. So how is everybody in Atlanta gay? So you're telling me the whole 6 million population of Atlanta is homosexual or lesbian? That's what you're telling me? Because you went to Lenox Mall and you saw a lot of gay people. So first thing to me is this. So you got to understand lifestyle. This is a grown man going to a city and going to a shopping mall. So my question was, who still does malls? This is like 2017. I'm like, you still doing the mall? I stopped doing the mall in like 98. Like, you know, I stopped, like, to me, the mall was something we did in high school, right? That was high school stuff to me. I stopped doing the mall in like 98. So I'm like, you a grown man and you still going to the shopping mall. So already I knew he kind of was off, in my opinion, because with the million things to do inside the city of Atlanta, you touch down in the city and you and your wife go to a shopping mall. Like, that's the place to be. But you know, he's from Alabama, so I don't think he knows any better. Then he says, well, I was in Lenox and all I saw was gay people. I say, okay, I don't know what to tell you, because one, I've never gone to, I don't think I've gone, I went to Piedmont one time to have a lunch with this chick. That's the first time I'd ever been to that mall, because I don't work the malls no more. That was something I did in high school. Once I got out of high school, I stopped going to shopping malls. Why? That's high school to me. What I want to go to a mall, be around a bunch of 15-year-olds for. That's all that's in the mall. I went to another mall in Tampa because I was doing some research for my streetwear line. It wasn't none in there but high schoolers. That's why I don't need to be in the mall, right? There's none in the mall but high schoolers in my mind. So what I want to hang around a bunch of 15-year-olds for, right? That's just not my scene. However, what happens to a lot of people in Atlanta is they go to 3 or 4 places and whatever they see, they think that's what's going on. And I'm here to tell you, anything you want to get into is inside the city of Atlanta. Anything. I was living in Atlanta. There was a brother off of Cascade was doing a workshop on cryptocurrencies back before anybody was really talking about it. This was like maybe 2018. You know, crypto was building up some steam, but it wasn't like it is now. He was doing workshops in the community center off of Cascade. I used to go down there because he was doing like workshops on crypto. There was a black sci-fi exhibition at that same community center off of Cascade where they had like all the people that did black sci-fi and black fantasy work, that like wrote books, had products, things of that nature. I even seen some movies. It was a really, really good exposition. That was in Atlanta. Like I said, Atlanta, they Toastmaster scene is on another level. They got, to me, the best, probably one of the better Toastmasters organizations in the whole country. They Toastmaster scene is on another level. We know they got the college scene. We know the music scene is there, right? Then you got the underworld, the drugs, the prostitution, the gang banging. To me, Atlanta, anything you want to get into is there. So when a person tells me I went to Atlanta and all I saw was 1, 2, 3, in my mind, well, that's what you went to. Because we in a metro area of 6 million people. So if you telling me you went to Atlanta and all you saw was gay people, all you saw was homosexuals and lesbians, that must be what you went to. And I'm not saying there's something wrong if that's what you went to. What I'm saying is that it's amazing that that's all you saw. When I was there, I was doing crypto. I was doing Toastmasters. I was doing video production. I was playing in like 3 basketball leagues in the city. Like I was just moving around doing something different like every day of the week. And I didn't see none of that because that's not my circle. And like I said, I'm not downing you if that's your circle. It just wasn't my circle. So I didn't see none of that. Right. But I was aware of that. I know, I've been known that Atlanta's gang related, and the average person don't know Atlanta's gang related. I know because I know what the terminology is and I know what the language is. Right. So therefore, you got to understand is that kind of like whatever you're into, you're going to find in Atlanta. I don't believe that you're going to go to Atlanta and run into a bunch of scammers and you ain't got something to do with scamming. I'm not saying they're not running scams in Atlanta. They are. What I'm saying is that if you go to Atlanta, I lived there for 3 years, man, I ain't meeting no but some scammers because you probably was trying to scam and you really wasn't that good at it. So you was getting scammed trying to scam. Because that's what happens to a lot of people. You trying to work a move, but you really don't know what you're doing. So you get into these communities of people. They peep the fact that you green and they run the scam on you because scammers scam scammers. That's part of the scamming game. They scam scammers, right? And they scammed you because you thought you was going to get into some scamming to make some money, but you really green. So they scammed you. And then now you on the internet talking some man Atlanta ain't nothing but some scammers. Or you want to try to get into music, but you really not a musician like that. But you thought you was going to get into music because people think you cute. And, some dudes just coerced you or persuaded you or really finessed you out of some sex. And then you not talking about some, everybody in Atlanta fake because you was trying to get into music because you think you cute, but you're really not an artist and you got finessed out of some sex. So now you mad. So now you going to make videos about Atlanta being yada, yada, yada. Like that goes on a lot in Atlanta. A lot of people show up at Atlanta with this perception that I'm going to cakewalk my way through this city just because, and they don't really have a lot to offer. And when they find that out, they get mad. Right? Instead of really going there with the intent of, I'm here to work. I'm here to put my best foot forward. And I'm not trying to get something for nothing. And I'm willing to sit here and over the next 5 to 10 years, build something for myself. And that's what I'm really willing to do. And that's still not a guarantee that things are going to work because there are no guarantees. You're right. It's just the only guarantee is that we're going to pass away one day. However, most people end up in Atlanta. They're there for the wrong reasons. They think it's a cakewalk. They think I don't have to work that hard and I can be successful because I see what I perceive is a lot of other black people being successful. Right. So that means that I can be successful and I don't have to really work that hard. And you don't know what those people did to get their success. You just know what you think you know about them. And then therefore they show up there. And when they realize like every other part of the world, you're going to have to really put that work in. You're going to have to put that time in. You're going to have to put the long hours in. You're going to have to put that extra effort in. And when you realize that, then they realize I don't want to do it anymore. There's a guy that I forgot who he manages. I think he co-manages Justin Bieber with Usher. White dude. He was in college in Atlanta. He started off in club promotion back when parties was real big in Atlanta. And then he turned club promotion into getting a spot in the music industry. And he turned that into becoming having the ability to represent Justin Bieber. I forgot the guy's name, but he not low key, but he not an artist, so his face not everywhere. He talked about how he just like literally was out every night till 3-4 o'clock in the morning for years trying to build up his club promotion business. Then he got into other businesses. Did things maybe work differently for him because of his skin tone? Yeah, but he put the work in. And one thing you notice about the city of Atlanta is the people that come there or the people that live there, they're just willing to consistently put the work in, they find success. Because one thing about Atlanta is nobody's going to stop you from making money because of this color of your skin. The difference between Atlanta and a lot of other parts of the country, but especially the South, is nobody's going to try to stop you from making money because of the color of your skin. Right? You can go to Miami, and if you don't speak Spanish, you're going to run into a lot of barriers. Right? A lot of people down in Miami is the same reason why they're coming to Atlanta. They just want to party. Them Cubans will take all your money for partying. They'll take all your money, but you're not going to ever get to a certain level in their society. Why? Because it's their society. They built it. Unless you want to speak Spanish and take on the Cuban identity, you're not going to get to but a certain level. And anybody that want to argue that, we can jump on the mic and I can show you what I'm talking about because I'm from Florida and I lived in Miami and I know how they run that city. That is a Cuban city, right? Atlanta is one of the few cities in the Southeast to where you can become really successful as a black person. And if people find out you made $40 million last year, they don't care. Right? They find out that you made $100 million last year. They don't care. And you don't have to do it in music and entertainment for them to feel comfortable with you. You can make it in business and nobody cares, right? They want you to make money in that city. The problem is people think they're going to make money in that city doing something easy. They're going to cakewalk their way to success. They're going to just be around some people, but I don't have to really do the work and I'm just going to fall into it. And that's the problem. If you move to Atlanta and you get with some people and y'all form a gang, and I don't mean a gang from a negative standpoint, y'all form a gang around what y'all doing, y'all can get money in that city because there's money there to get. There's money up there to get. It just is there. However, you got to be focused on that and let everybody else get caught into the party and that, because the money in Atlanta is selling that to people, not doing it. The money in Atlanta is selling the party to people. The money in Atlanta is selling the lifestyle to people. The money in Atlanta is selling to people that they're going to be successful in music. The money in Atlanta is selling to these chicks that they're going to be models. That's the money. The money's not in doing any of that. The money's in selling it to people. That's the money. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand, is because they come up there and they don't really understand how, from an economic standpoint, they don't understand how business works. They don't really understand how to see the opportunity. They miss out because they want to live the lifestyle. And there's people that are selling you that you can live the lifestyle, but that's how they make their money. They don't make their money living that lifestyle, right? And I want people to really understand that. So you can utilize this for Atlanta. You can utilize this for any city that you're moving to. But Atlanta, because it's a kind of hot city, because of people's perception of it. To me, Atlanta, from a geographical standpoint, one of the best cities to live in the country, right? One of the best cities to live in the country from a geographical standpoint. It's a very clean city. At least where I lived, it was. The air is on another level because of the trees. It's very, very clean from an air standpoint. The traffic to me really wasn't that bad once you learn how to take the residential roads. And I didn't have any issues with a lot of people. Maybe because I'm from Florida, I get along real well with a lot of black Georgians, especially in the Atlanta area. I was cool there. Maybe it was just me. I'm not saying that nothing couldn't happen to me. Something can happen to you anywhere you go. But I didn't have a lot of issues there with people. I knew how to get in there. I knew how to network with real Georgians. I got down with them. I stayed down with those people. Then I built my network out from there, because to me, the Southeast is the Southeast. And so I kind of understand how it's going to move because I understand the Southeast. And the difference between me and a lot of other people is when I moved to Atlanta, I dealt with Georgians. I didn't deal with out-of-towners. And what I think the mistake that a lot of people make is when they move to Atlanta, they're an out-of-towner dealing with nothing but out-of-towners. Well, when I moved to Atlanta, I was an out-of-towner dealing with Georgians. So the people I knew they was literally born and raised in the city of Atlanta. And those are the people I started moving with because what? I needed to know what the rundown was. So give me the rundown, and then from there, I work my moves. But if you're dealing with somebody that's from out of town, they don't know what the rundown is. Why? Because they're not from the city. And I was dealing with people that was actually from the city. But I don't want to turn that into a whole nother video. But I wanted to really give my perspective on this because I think that Atlanta gets a bad rap, right? From people that really don't understand how to be successful. And then my question is that if you go to another city and you do the same thing that you did in Atlanta, how are you going to find success? So I hope you got some value from it. David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave. I'll talk to you later.